Hey, it's Dan Morales, America's Mortgage Man, and it is the year 2020. We're off and running. It is Thursday, January 9th, and finally getting back on the saddle with the podcast here. I apologize. Over the holiday period, we didn't really put out a whole lot of new content, and in part that was because I was traveling, and in part it was because I was enjoying some time with my family, and in part it is because I'm overcoming a cold. So if my voice sounds a little bit different, that is because I'm in the tail end of a cold. So I'm hoping to be breaking free of that here within the course of the next day or so, and hopefully be up and running at full speed ahead. So if I sound a little more scatterbrained than normal, there's a reason for that. Well, hey, it's 2020, and we want to get started with the podcast for this year. And what I want to do is I want to go back to the basics of kind of, what this podcast started with. And really what it was meant to be an educational podcast where you have an opportunity to listen and just get some really good rock solid advice and knowledge when it comes to financing your new house and or buying one, right? Now, you might be a buyer for the first time. You might be somebody who's buying for the second, third, or fourth time. You might be somebody who is looking at buying an investment property, or you may have any multitude of unique situations. And, over the course of the last 149 episodes, we've covered a lot of ground. If you look at the list of shows we've done, we've covered, things for self-employed borrowers, advanced strategies for folks who are doing a smaller down payment. We've talked about divorce and mortgages. We've talked about unique circumstances with student loans and or income or credit and all that other good stuff. The one thing that the mortgage industry is really good at is it is the gift that keeps on giving, meaning that the rules and guidelines are always changing, and sometimes those changes come fast. Sometimes they come slow. So, what I want to do is I want to be able to make sure that you always have the most current, up-to-date information when it comes to what is available in the marketplace and what your options are. Okay. So as we go into 2020, we're going to go back to the basics and talk about some of that stuff. One of the things I always harp on as part of this podcast is I always harp on, the need to make sure that you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing. Right. I know I talk about this, time and time again. And one of the things that I want to do with the podcast is I really want to start to incorporate more just real life stories of, what I deal with day in and day out, what my clients deal with day in and day out, and hopefully help you to avoid some of them same circumstances. Well, one of the things I always beat on is, the importance of working with somebody who's experienced. That's especially true if you're going to be looking at buying a house. And I want to share two quick stories, as it relates to a real estate agent representing you as part of your home purchase. Okay. The first one is I have some clients that we pre-approved last year. Those clients were not able to find a property. We updated their pre-approval here just within the course of the last week. Since we've updated their pre-approval, they now have a different realtor. Okay. Now the realtor they're working with now is somebody I'm very familiar with, somebody I know in our marketplace who has been around for a really long time, a very good seasoned agent who knows what they're doing. Because sometimes you don't win on an offer, or you're not successful in multiple offers because you have an agent that doesn't have enough experience, meaning that that agent didn't know how to craft the offer in such a way that you actually did win when you were competing against 10 other people for a property. That oftentimes can make a big difference, because I've had clients who have the same situation as this couple. They worked with somebody, or they got connected with somebody who didn't have a lot of knowledge and experience, and they would lose time and time again on properties. They finally get to an agent who has a lot of experience and knowledge, and they actually end up winning a property in relatively short order. So, why the difference, right? Well, the difference has to do for a couple different reasons. One being that the person that they're choosing to work with now has enough knowledge and experience that they know how to craft that offer in such a way that they actually win versus, let's say, 10 other people. And the other part to that is the depth of knowledge and experience that person has, coupled with, if you will, their relationships in the industry, okay? So if you have an agent that's been around for, 10, 15, 20 years, oftentimes if somebody's been in this industry for that long, they're successful at it. And they're successful at it because they've done business the right way. way because they know how to get a transaction closed. They have a good reputation and so on. So if you have that person representing you and you're competing against, let's say, 5 or 10 other people, and those 5 or 10 other people are represented by a bunch of newbies who don't know how to necessarily put that transaction together correctly, and they don't have the benefit of having an agent that, let's say, is well known or respected, they're already starting at a less competitive standpoint, if you will. Okay, now that's not to say that everybody that doesn't have a ton of experience in real estate isn't capable of representing you well, because that would be a misstatement, if you will, because there are some people who are newer to the industry that have done a phenomenal job, who are really aggressive go-getters, and they've done a really good job building a really good reputation and a really good business in a short order. We have a number of those people locally in the market that I work in, okay? We also have a number of agents that have been around a long time that are really seasoned, and they're really good. They know what they're doing. And oftentimes those agents will end up prevailing in multiple offer situations because they know how to put that offer together correctly. And the depth of those personal relationships they have with other agents, oftentimes can get them across the finish line, okay? Because it's not uncommon, believe it or not, guys, it's not uncommon to not have the highest price be the winner, okay? Because a good listing agent is going to look at not only the price that somebody's willing to, offer for a property, they're going to look at who they're represented by. They're going to look at who the lender is, right? Like if your lender is not respected or doesn't have a depth of knowledge or experience in the industry, not well known, they may not take that into account, right? So they may not work in your favor. I know we have had clients win transactions because people know us, and because they know us, they know that we're going to get the job done. And we've had conversations with listing agents and so on, where once they've talked to me, they know that we know what we're doing. And we've had many transactions where our clients have prevailed because we were the lender in the transaction, coupled with a really good rock star realtor on top of that, okay? So you really want to make sure you have a good, seasoned realtor that knows what they're doing. And if you're working with somebody who's newer, that's okay too, provided that they have some kind of track record that they can show you of being successful. I can think of a couple of agents locally that have done a ton of business. They've just come in, hit the ground running, and they really work really hard for their client's best interest. So those people are out there, okay? So I don't want to seem like I'm throwing somebody who has less experience underneath the bus, as much as you just want to make sure you vet them well. Part of vetting them is do they have reviews? Do they have a number of sales, and are they doing this full time? Right? Can they do this, and can they afford to do this full time without having some kind of side hustle as part of what they're doing? Okay, so you want to vet that, because in this case, these clients have an experienced realtor now. That experienced realtor knows how to craft that offer, and I suspect they'll get an offer accepted in relatively short order. Okay, now the other thing I want to talk about though is, in a lot of areas, you still have these really competitive markets, right? You have, multiple offer situations where you're competing against multiple people. In those situations where you're competing against multiple offers, if you will, it is very uncommon for you to be able to get seller-paid closing costs as part of a transaction. Now, for a lot of buyers who are buying for the first time, you're trying to keep your amount of cash that you need to have at the time of closing to a bare minimum. Well, if you're trying to keep your cash to a bare minimum, those seller-paid closing costs can oftentimes help to reduce that amount of cash you have to have by a big chunk, right? So you're going to want to, try to get the seller to pay some closing costs. Well, if you're competing against, 5 or 10 other people, and you're asking for seller paid cost, and those 5 or 10 other people are not, there's a good chance that unless you're paying significantly more than somebody else, you're likely going to lose in that offer, right? And even if you are paying more, your offer still may not be accepted because you may have concerns as to whether or not the property would actually appraise. So a good listing agent may not even consider your offer, as one of the finalists, just because you have seller paid cost. Now, there are other parts or other areas where you could potentially get some seller paid cost, and we're starting to see that come back some in some areas. Now, in this case, I reached out to the realtor that these clients were represented with, and I talked with him and said, hey, if they can get some seller paid cost, it would be helpful. Now, I've explained to the clients that that's not likely going to happen, just given, the price point they're looking at and the fact that it's very competitive and so on. The nice part is this agent already had a lot of data on a house that they were looking at. And he was very confident that they likely could get some seller paid costs as part of their transaction. So this is one where a good experienced agent knows the market. They know the fine nuances. They know the details. They know how to put those pieces together so that they can craft that offer in such a way that not only you'll win, but it ideally has the best outcome for you. Okay. So don't just pick a realtor because you went on some website. Okay. I went on a website and I asked for information on a property. And as soon as I input the information, they called me back immediately, so I chose to work with them. Well, if somebody is that Johnny on the spot and they call you back within seconds of you requesting that information, that's usually a red flag. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why it's a red flag to me, because if you're that fast to respond, that means you got nothing to do. And if you got nothing to do, it's generally because you're probably not the best agent that's out there. Now, if you're talking to, let's say one of those agents that is, what I like to call a super agent, where they have a team of, 15 or 20, agents that work underneath them, there's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes you're not going to end up working with that super experienced agent as much as you may end up working with somebody on their team that is less experienced, less knowledgeable. Now, they still have the benefit of having that really good seasoned agent to guide them and direct them, but you're typically not going to have the face time with that super agent, and you're generally not going to have their undivided attention, right? So it's, that's one of those things to give some consideration to as well. And again, I'm not saying that, those who work in real estate teams are bad, because they certainly are not. I've worked with a lot of really good, awesome real estate teams. But what I want to say is, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is you really want to go through and you want to try to vet the individual person that you're going to be doing the most work with. Okay. How much, do they really know about real estate? How long have they done this? Have they done it, full time? Have they sold a number of houses? Do they have reviews? Do they have recommendations that they can give you as part of that? If they work as part of a bigger team, does that bigger team have a number of reviews and a number of recommendations? And do you feel confident that person, as part of a bigger team, is going to be able to adequately serve you and to serve you well? I've worked with some really big teams here in West Michigan, and those teams are awesome. They're really well run. They have really solid leadership, and they really do an awesome job for their clients. I've seen other teams where it just doesn't work that way. Same thing is true when I can say I've seen newer agents that aren't maybe as seasoned or as knowledgeable as what they should be, versus an agent that has 15 or 20 years worth of experience, right? So again, it's not to make too big of a generalization that you should work with somebody that has 10 plus years experience or somebody who's not on a team. I definitely do not want to feel like I'm painting anybody negatively in that light, as much as I'm just saying that these are all things that you should give some consideration to when you're looking at who you're going to work with. You want to like the person, you want to feel that they're responsive, but ultimately you want to make sure that they know what they're doing. They know the market. They keep abreast with what's going on with the market. They know, the fine nuances and the fine details of how to craft that offer so that you have the best opportunity to win. Okay. So again, hey, my name is Dan Morales, America's Mortgage Man. My NMLS number is 709-729. My phone number is 616-931-4629. You can find me online at danmorales.com. That's DANMORALEZ.com. In the weeks to come, I'm going to be interviewing some different realtors that I've worked with traditionally in the past. Some of them run really big teams, and they're just awesome at doing it, and they do a great job. And some of them are just kind of agents where you work with that person one-on, and that's who you're going to work with, right? So there's a lot of really good agents that are out there. If you are going to buy a house, you really need to find one. Don't search for your realtor, if you will, on Zillow or HomeLight or something like that. Maybe I'll talk about that next week. A little experience I had with HomeLight and their website. I did a little bit of testing on it, and I was kind of surprised at some of the results that I got there. So we'll talk about that in the weeks to come. some, and we're going to be talking about frequently asked questions and just really going back to some of the basics and, some more storytelling about things that I've run into recently with clients and ways that you can ideally save yourself some money and at the same time save yourself some heartache. So, hey, appreciate you listening. If you enjoy this podcast, do me a favor, share it with your friends and family, and most importantly, write a review for us on your favorite podcast catcher. Some of you are listening on Spotify, some of you are on iHeartRadio, some of you are on iTunes, but we really would appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star review for us. That helps other people to find us and to become educated more, if you will, in regards to the home buying process. So I really would appreciate it if you could do that. And of course, the biggest compliment that you can pay us is when you are in the market to buy a house, would be to give us the opportunity to finance that house for you. We do lend in all 50 states. We do pretty much every product in most of those 50 states. There's a few exceptions to that. But if you're in a state where you are looking for a product that we don't have available, I have a network of nationwide friends that can definitely help us out. So I appreciate you listening, and do me a favor, make sure you reach out if you're in the market for a mortgage, and make sure you share the podcast. Hey, thanks for listening. Again, this is Dan Morales, America's Mortgage Man, and of course, Northpointe Bank is an equal housing lender.